I may start to think, well, what's this for? What are we going to do next? That's I. And then the I learns it better and everything, but there's something called intention going on. So what I'm trying to do right there is there's the noise of the I. You could be a little off, okay? But it's more important than anything else. Right? What is intention? Well, it's focusing on the point, focusing on the ground, the settle, the sinking. I don't want to sink, that's the I. I don't want to go down, I want to do it. Yeah, right there. Check. See, one thing for me is that when I'm in intention, I'm not in the noisy I. So already a shift from I to something, maybe towards self. Anybody with a comment or observation? David, anything?
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, sure.
You're breathing in and out through the nose and the whole time, or in through the nose and out through the mouth?
I don't think it matters. See, that's an I question. Okay, which is good. But try nose, try mouth, try nose, mouth, try mouth, nose. I don't know that it matters. Okay? This traditionally, I always thought. In breath here, out breath mouth. But sometimes we get so mired in tradition, this is how it's been done, we lose essence. And certain patterns might make it more difficult to touch essence. But essence is essence. Remember what Nado Sensei got from O Sensei? Nado, you don't have to learn people's sounds. Now, the other things, you might have to deal with sound, vibration, energy, but you don't have to know the old sounds. I thought that was very interesting. I learned the old sounds. It was a lot of work. Okay. But does that answer anything, Cliff? Yeah, okay. So what's more intense, important than, okay, now I'm doing it the way it's been done for 15 generations. Okay. Maybe it's been 15 rigid generations, all of a sudden you go, oh. And maybe the essence of it is starting to touch what we call intention. And you could nose, mouth, mouth, nose, 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 mouth, mouth. And maybe as long as it's essence, it don't matter. Okay? Anybody else with a question or observation on that? Well, the question I would ask them is, how do I feel? I feel easier. Might be all the stuff going on in my eye. When I can shift into intention, it doesn't matter whether it's nose, mouth, mouth, nose, 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 mouth, mouth. I start to be very easy with the eye. So that's what I'm aiming for. Anybody with a question, observation? Okay. Now, one of the things that Sensei said about Misogi is we must cleanse the 6 senses. And of course, there's vision, hearing, olfactory, taste, touch. Okay? Yeah. So what might that mean? Yeah, actually, there's the last one, the 6th one, which he lists and is translated as mind. So he puts that in to the senses. And he says we must cleanse or purify them. Well, I is used to living in the clutter of this world. And of course, we have our 5 senses, which are obvious, and the 6th sense, which is less obvious. Okay? And so we're kind of tied to this confusion of I self. And our senses just give it back to it. Out there, it comes back. So what I thought we'd do is just another exercise. And part of what this is about is I bounce off of things. I reach over there to get the book, and it falls and hits my toe. And then I step down to pick it up, and I hit my head on the edge of the table. And I'm in a real pisser of a mood. Does that sound familiar? I get up and I trip over this thing over here, which then I get mad at somebody because it's over there. And then, I keep bouncing off of things. And things bounce off of me. And that's the way on a bad day, the eye and the senses are. So we're going to spend a little time using the same thing. Now, ultimately, it's not so much about how you do it. We're going to use a couple of other movements. We can do the standing, we can do the sitting. Okay? Now, we were going here and here. Okay? This time, this represents both here and here. Like, for example, when I go this way, it's supposed to a lot of thoughts. Am I getting it right? I'm just trying to feel my feet on the ground, my toes, my heel, balls in my feet. That lets me know this is going on, but I'm focused on the intention, not trying to figure it out. This time we're going to go this way, but this represents both this and that. And then we're going to go and we're going to open. Remember, he says Misogi is the receptive side of the universe. And what happens is, I bump into something, I that table over there, oh, I stubbed my toe on that. I get very, very angry, which especially these days with all that's going on, it's pretty easy. I have seen this. So what we're going to do, instead of going here and here, this is both this and that. This is an opening. And what that opening is designed to do, there's me and there's what's around me. And what's around me, I perceive through the five senses, and there's a less obvious sixth sense. So we're going to go through the five senses. So what I'd like you to do, we'll try this maybe more than once. Just breathe in. Now we're going to open up the vision. Wide angle lens, soft eyes. In breath. And now we're going to focus on hearing. Sounds going on, but there's hearing going on. In breath. Nose, olfactory. Opening the senses up. In breath. It's the tongue, which is taste. Now, in breath. We're going to just say touch, which is skin. In breath. Now, this time, the senses are kind of our windows to what's out there. Let's just say that's the outer world we're in right now. In breath. This time, the inner world of me, my breathing, my heartbeat, my psychological state, whatever. And I just want you to sit there without the motion. There's an interior you, and there's the outer world, an outer expression. Everything out there may have its own independent existence, but it's our perception of it. Now, this is a quick one, but we just cleared the five senses. So how do you feel? Just take stock. For me, breathing's deep, natural. Heartbeat is regular, not rushed, not forced. Either on the floor, kind of enjoy this feeling. Even though there's not physical heat, there's a warmth to both me and what's going around me. Okay? So I'm interested in what went on for you with that. We just cleared the five senses. Okay? Anybody? How do you feel?
Feel pretty relaxed.
Yeah, okay. That's okay, good. Anybody else?
It's really hard to sit still.
It's hard to what?
It's hard to sit still.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that happens is when you start to settle, some juice starts to come up. Okay, that's where the intention comes in. Because, you know, I start to, and all of a sudden the eye gets very busy and wants to kind of do this. On the other hand, you could be right here and fall asleep. So that's the eye right there, right? Sometimes in a larger space, a larger dimension of yourself opens up, we zonk out. Or we feel pushed. So just stay with the practice, that's intention. Okay. Bonnie, anything on your end?
Yes, Sensei. Us going through the senses where I'm sitting now is perfect. It's raining here, so I am not only more relaxed, but the smell of the rain is just much more enjoyable right now.
Okay, yeah. So there's been maybe, I don't know where the eye was before we started this class or before we started that, but you see, you're by the Misogi, the clearing of, it does induce potentially more relaxed, open state. Or in David's case, as he starts to kind of open, he gets more juice. We're all very, there are probably not an infinite number of variations, but on the other hand, there's probably three main things that can happen. One, you feel more relaxed and present. Two, you get fidgety because it's hard to sit still. Three, you fall asleep. And there are probably a couple of others, but those are pretty easy, aren't they? If you're feeling fidgety, just be easy with that and stay with the intention. If you are nodding off, see, sometimes when another dimension of you opens up, there's more energy there. One is to feel pushed, the other one is to zone out. I used to do that all the time when I meditated. Still happens. Focus on the breathing. Okay? Now, so we worked the 5. Okay? Now the 6th can be many things, probably. But what I'm going to say is the 6th is intention. Whether you're there falling asleep, getting more into inner peace, or you're getting fidgety, that's you. That's I. Okay? Now, if you're feeling calmer, that's good. But there are levels of that. And you'll kind of know it because you feel calm, all of a sudden you do this, and all of a sudden you fall asleep, or you feel kind of fidgety. Okay? Sometimes stay with the intention. So we've got eyes, ears, mouth. Right? Skin. And Sensei calls it mind. Or it's translated as mind. But I'm just playing the game right here that what it is intention. And just check your general vibe out. My mind right here is pretty calm. It's not cluttered with a lot of thoughts or I thoughts. A lot of people find it real difficult to just sit this way. We're not doing anything. Can you do something? Give me something to do. And yet, you could be in a pretty calm, peaceful, warm, open state with yourself, which is pretty good. Or you could be drifting off. But in all three cases, stay with the intention. Okay? Now, this is an easier one. Put your hands on your lower tummy. You just feel your breathing. I don't feel my breathing. It's up here in my nose and mouth. It's in the chest. Relax and open. That's intention. So I can feel my stomach going in and out without me sticking it out and pulling it back. You don't do intention. I'm going to intend. We've already gotten in the way of it. So one of the things about, let's just say, what Osensei meant by mind, and I'm just sort of making it up. It's an experiment. I can just sort of feel the lower tummy as I breathe going out and in and out. That's intention. You should have done this first, but you can't backtrack at this point. Okay? Anybody on that last one? Is that easier for you? David, is that easier for you? No?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else on that last one?
Since it helps me with thinking about intention, I frequently forget what my intention is during the process, but that was a good reminder to bring myself back on track with the breathing and just feel the belly breathing out and in, and that in itself was intention to get me back on track.
Well, it's a simpler intention. The problem with, like, you're doing a practice, it's usually seen as a technique, meditation technique, a visualization. So there's something I do, okay? But the intention is a bit different than that. And how I do it is oftentimes somewhat subject to how I was taught to do it and by whom. Okay? And so literally, what sometimes gets obscured is what we might call essence. See, I intend, I'm already getting in the way of it. I'm going to breathe whether I intend to or not. Okay, you can't hold your breath and suffocate yourself because you may pass out, but you'll start breathing. But I can get out of the way. My intention can be to allow a much more natural breath. Okay? So that's that's what we call how shall I put it? It's a practice. You got to stand up. We're going to go into the other room and check. I've been sitting, and instead of the body feeling cramped, I could eat some food. I feel pretty cool. We haven't done hardly any movement, but the intention is allow your energy to move. Energy to center, the energy to sink and ground. The movement of your breath. Spending some time saying, our senses get so, I'm going to do something and I hit the wall. I almost trip over the chair. It's like, this gets scrambled. As you open the senses, you get a better sense for what's around you. And you also get a clearer sense for who you are. Okay? Now, right where I am, I can start to feel my feet on the ground. And I'll give myself a head, a face. Anyway, we're going to go into the other room. Woo! I didn't have a clock. I didn't realize that part of it was. So let's go. And this should somewhere. A full body, I think. Okay. Okay. Good. So again, feel the body. From having done that, see, I don't have to itemize everything in the room to get a sense of the room. I don't have to think to feel the carpet as far as to the floor in the kitchen. Breathing, breathe. Arms are kind of naturally hanging down from the shoulders, not a pull forward or a military lock the knees, but the knees are straight. And motion. Pretty fluid and free without, making it too complex. Okay. One other exercise that we might try here. Yeah, so it's we're going to add some sound. And since we're standing, what we're going to do is add very important sound in Aikido is the soothe. So let's try that. Yeah, if you would actually make the sound, okay? Because this is building a little bit on what we're doing, okay? Let's try that together. Motion, standing. What I'd like you to do, world of I, intention. The sound is a vibration energy. See if we can go directly to the energy. Doesn't matter how well you do it, how loud you do it, or whether you make the physical sound or not. But let's Now, let's not make the sound, but project the sound from inside. Okay. And I'd like you to do, just from where you are, check. See, there's a lot going on here and a lot going on in our sense of the world. Okay? And when we're kind of in that room of the tight eye, very difficult to get out of it. But, things like breath, motion, things like meditation, things like movement, Misogi, the eye starts to kind of return more to itself as a self. And you realize there are other rooms or dimensions. So the eye starts to open, you start to feel these other dimensions. Now with the sound, we'll go into how well I'm doing it, whether I'm doing it at all, whether I got it right. That's I. That's that little tight room. But if I can just go right to the sound energy, I'm creating a bridge to that through what we call intention. Okay? So let's try that a couple times. I'm going to check and see how. Let's just do it without the sound. Okay. Now, question. How are you doing with it? Check yourself out. Check the activity up here, or conversely, clarity, non-activity. Check your breathing. Check your contact with where you're standing. That's your general sense of self. Okay? Anybody? Question, observation, observation, question? Okay, no? David, anything? You still feeling restless?
The restlessness is just turning into a general, I can feel my whole body now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. Remember what we did? Start to feel you. Now he says body, but that's where he is. is where his body is. Now there are dimensions of body, like there are dimensions of, all right? Anybody else? Question, observation, observation, question?
I am noticing the places in my body where there's muscle tension more clearly than before.
Yeah, okay, so there's a clear sense of it, okay? Now you can get into a limited, I'm gonna do this or that. But if my system starts to open, one of the things I become more conscious. I'm sharing a little tension in the back of my shoulders. Oh. I'm carrying something, my jaw. Oh. My forehead might be a little tight. Oh. There also may, oh, it's an opening. Okay. Anybody else? Bonnie, any observations?
I'm still feeling them out, Sensei, but it's a general feeling of a new balance point that I'm feeling how far the balance point has expanded. Is not the right word, but I'm feeling where the egg or the bubble is right now. So,
Okay. Okay. Good. Anybody else or anything in addition? Okay. Yeah. I don't wave. It's something we can swing. Also, just around the room for right. Yeah. Now this motion, for example. Now we did this one. Center, sink, settle, ground. Center, sink, settle, ground. Let's do this. Let's make this centering this motion. I don't have to drift up with it, nor do I have to come along as I'm raising. There is the center point. Now, this is a sinking grounding. Okay. So, those of you, we've done a lot of breath centering. And all of a sudden, this is more of a movement drill, something that we have done before. So, observations, questions, observations, anybody? What's the effect of we call our attempts at Misogi? And then we're taking it into an activity. Can we make that activity an extension of that Misogi? Anybody? Question? Observation? No? That's my telephone. I'm not going to go answer it. So go to voicemail. Anybody? Anybody? I'm doing the movement. I'm getting the movement better. There's a point. Now, instead of going, we're just going this way. That point's still there. Now, instead of swinging the sword, that point, there's a sinking, grounding, settling. Boom. Boom. Okay? So we're doing a simple motion. That's an extension of some of the breath settling work, Misogi work we did. Anybody? Anybody?
Sensei, for me, just with the feeling I described before of exploring the perception of new boundaries, with this, I just feel as if with the anvil dropping, I'm getting I don't know if it's clear sense of a boundary or like a fresh pulse of reinforcing the energy around me, but I feel it. I feel like it's helping. Don't have the right words for it, but I definitely notice it building on itself.
Okay, yeah, so you may not have a word for it right now, but you're noticing something. Okay, anybody else? Okay,
I'm definitely noticing something I don't have a word for.
yeah, that's the problem. You know what I mean? There's you don't have to have a word for it right now. In fact, if you try to create a word, you're going to go back into I. Okay? In your I room, you got a whole bunch of study books. You start turning the pages in them. Then you get busy. And you may come up with an answer. I'd rather you stay with the in the moment experience of who you are. But now we're for example, doing a little bit more motion. Okay, and so a lot of stuff we did was more settle, breathe, but intention, 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 intention. Yes, I'm swinging the sword, but intention, intention, intention. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so swing, everybody. And see if you can go right to the intention. Yes, you got to know how to hold the sword, how you have a broad sense of what the cut is. But can you go directly to the intention? Which is, I think, a lot of what Misogi is about. See, my five senses give me a sense of what's going on, but since they said six senses, if that sixth sense was intention, what's the sense of it through that sixth sense? Boom, 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 boom. So swing.
So Sensei, with that one, I felt that description of molasses you used before. I felt as if my
Okay.
body was starting to break up the chunks of hard molasses and make them smooth into a same consistency. So improving that manner.
Okay, now that she just went to another room. That molasses feeling doesn't exist in the room of the tight eye. Okay, anything else on that? When you get the molasses feeling, anything else?
It just feels I'm in more of a flow state, and that doing each of the strokes seems more control and less effort, as if I can just not bounce through them, but just as if I'm not doing them as easy as breathing for when we did it.
Okay, so it's more effortless. That doesn't exist in the room of the tight eye. Okay. Anybody else? Observation or question?
There was a moment where I felt like I had done 3 cuts very much the same. And as soon as I noticed it, it started going all over the place.
Yeah, what happens a little bit, you're starting to find that other room, and there's like, part of the intention is those instincts puts it, you go to you visit a country, you get citizenship. See, a lot of times people bumble into something or stumble into something pretty profound, and they never get back to it. It was just a peak experience, or what was that? All right, so we sort of want to have a kind of a, the docent likes mapping, but it's just that, okay, now. All right, but when David went 1, 2, 3, the second I go, you go back into the first room or one of a sub room of the first room, and all of a sudden it goes kind of chaotic right there. But you're standing in a more advanced place. There's more energy. And when I goes back to its tight sense, it gets more chaotic. David's not saying he can force the movement to be consistent. There is a consistency to that motion in that other room. Okay? Now that will be true of Ikkyo or Nikkyo or Irimi Nage or Kotegaishi or any of the Aikido moves. Okay? Anybody else? Question, observation? Observation, question?
So I'm still puzzling, like
Yeah.
doing, like in the way you're using intention is like without conscious volition, but there's an intentionality that is unconscious, but real. And I don't know, psychologists have said that we have shown that we make decisions unconsciously a lot of the time and then later rationalize with the conscious mind. So it seems like you're trying to get a more integrated sense of self, that the intention, I don't know, I guess maybe that's part of the purity in the Misogi, is like that the intention be complete and unconscious and just effortless. And I don't know, that's where I am right now. Sort of,
Yeah.
I've been having to duck out and feed lunch to the kids, so I've been thinking about it in the headspace a little bit more than usual.
These times right now, multitasking almost continuously. Yeah. Okay. So as see, there's a difference between the intention in that tight room. All right. And that's I intent. And there's so much going on there. It's real difficult to focus. As you kind of get a little settle into the next level, there's another room where the self is a little clearer. So the intention is clear. Now we're going. There's another room after that, another room after that, and another room after that. Mado Sensei, for example, kind of likes to map the rooms out, which is good, but it's also like an elevator going down a shaft. And what I'm trying to do a little bit is see if we can go straight to the intention, which is more straight to the energy, okay? Which means, you know, the eye here, the eye here, the eye here. See, the eye will study, the eye will come to conclusions, the eye will mature in its understanding of things. But all that time, there is the intensity. And I think part of the Misogi is increasingly going directly to the intention. And as Cliff kind of pointed out, most things, you know, maybe on a subconscious or unconscious level, there's an intention, which then finds its way up to my eye, and therefore I have an intention to see that. But as we go deeper or finer or more original, maybe intention, maybe we are intention. There was a book that Carlos Castaneda wrote, and a man named Wayne Dyer did a whole PBS special on it called The Power of Intent. And I can't quote the thing word for word, but Don Juan told Carlos, he says, look, there's a power in the universe called intent. And everything came out of there. Everything was intended into being. And therefore, everything is connected to that original intention by what he called a connecting link. And the connecting link, he said, in most people is so corroded because we're in the world of I, limited room, that it's almost useless. We feel pushed around by the activity of the room. But he says, the work is to clear that connecting link to where you are a part of that original thing called intention. Therefore, you have the almost unlimited power of that original thing. Now, the connecting link between us and intention is probably intent. And it goes from I to better level of I, to more open level of I, to more finer level of I. And then the connecting link starts to. So I'm just saying, let's play the game where we go directly to the intention. And in the process, you know, you learn to swing the sword pretty well. But well, can we kind of just boom, directly to the intention. This is the point, boom. That's the grounding, sinking, settled feeling, boom, boom, boom. And there's I trying to do it, and I trying to figure intent out, and there's boom. It's direct. Boom. So, you know, the cutting motion or any Aikido movement can be a pretty good sense of it. Okay, and since we're here, we're going to go into the other room for just a little bit, maybe have a little bit more sit-down discussion, all right? But let's swing. Okay. Okay. So let's go into the other room. All right. So let's go over that piece that we started out with again. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to go through the previous paragraph. Izanagi represents the physical aspect of the earth. Well, Izanami represents the spiritual elements. Now is the time to think of the physical and the spiritual as one. Deep inside the physical, there is the spiritual. The power of the spirit is activated and polished through Misogi. If there is no Misogi, a good world cannot be constructed. Okay. So let's just say there's a whole world, a collective world of I, where everybody's senses are clogged. Even if the right thing is done, sometimes it's done for the wrong reasons. So, the Misogi allows for an increasing level of dangerous word, but it's called truth. Truth of who we are, the truth of what the world is. In this little box, right now, it's nuts. So one of the things we can do is by doing the Misogi, we start to create more space in our own personal world, which hopefully reaches out. And helps enough people do that, and a better world is created. There's physical action, social action, spiritual action, which can happen. As that happens, it will not happen. Will not happen maybe as well as it could in here. Okay. 4 years ago, I thought, oh, we've had an African-American president. Now we're going to have the first woman as president. Excuse me. Yes. Okay, what's up? Okay, could you bug me in 15 minutes? Okay, thank you. It's my daughter. Glad I answered that. Usually it's a scam. But anyway, with that's all. That was the sentence prior to.
Well, and then 4 years ago, we got a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Which was just reenacted by a literal call.
Yeah, no, that's true. See, that's part of it. You know, there's a saying: you don't win until everybody wins. There is no personal enlightenment. There's just enlightenment when everybody's enlightened.
So I've been thinking a lot about O-sensei during World War II
Yeah,
lately, because he was living in a time when his government was acting in an extremely immoral fashion.
yep,
And he was not in sync with that at all.
that's correct.
He had to chart a course through
Yep.
through that turbulent period. So I don't know, maybe it's like the bumper stickers, you know, what would Jesus do? Or what would Steve Jobs do? Or like, what would O-sensei do, right? You know, it's dealing with this government, with the Trump administration. So I think about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not at war, but we're kind of in a war for our souls, the soul of the country, the soul of ourselves. So yeah, there is a war going on. I think O-sensei would say, you know, you want to be an activist, be an activist. But everybody in their own way right now needs to be an activist. And doing Misogi is activism. So he would probably just say continue to do the Misogi.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the external war in Japan, there was a war for the soul of Japan happening.
That's right.
Internally, right? So
yeah. And all the metaphors since they used, like the Kami, Izanagi, Amaterasu, was part of the war effort. It was called State Shinto. So the words make the country great. Okay. Words are words, but the Koto Kama is a little different, isn't it? So the words come out of a deeper level of ourselves. Our actions, therefore, come out of that deeper level of ourselves and are imbued with intention. Yeah. So wherever O-sensei's outward thing, he might be an activist, you know, and he might not be a recluse, but he might be choosing to kind of do what he did in World War II. We don't know. But he would be doing Misogi no matter what. Okay? Anybody else with a question, comment, observation?
Since I had one more physical observation with the group of movements we did with regarding my hips, like one side's more tense than the other. And when we were doing the strikes, I would swap from left foot being forward, right foot being forward, and swap the hand positions. And I noticed as the Misogi increased, the hips were balancing more.
Okay.
And I think that's what helped the feelings I described earlier. But I did notice with the hand positions that we wouldn't normally hold the bokken in, that's the side I need to work on more to balance both sides.
Well, I think I mentioned is that my left side cut is better than my right side. And in most things, my left side is better than my right side. Doesn't mean I'm a natural southpaw. It just means that I've learned to do things better on the right side. And the left is more encouraged to be natural. It's a funny thing. We tend to think the more I learn, the better I get. When a certain type of growth is you don't get better, you get clearer. The Misogi takes you to a better level of you, which is natural in a better room where more things and possibilities are available. Therefore, the cut in your body movement improves. If you try to make your body movement, the cut improves, you interfere with that. It's kind of a razor's edge path because we all want that. Okay? So, good observation. But what you're doing on the left side, the question is, now, how do I balance the two? we'll continue the Misogi on both sides and see what happens. Okay? Anybody else? Yeah, it's a little tricky. Let's go over, just because I wanted to go over the section that we started out with, but the paragraph before was actually quite important too. According to Kototama theory, Misogi is explained like this. Mi is water, yin, fullness, fruit, path, jewel. So is wind covering that which is enveloped. Yi is lively, penetrating, whiteness, bleaching, removal. In short, Misogi is a cleansing of all defilements, a removal of all obstacles, a radiant state of unadorned purity, the accomplishment of all things, a vibrant state of divine virtue, a spotless universe. Now, obviously, O-sensei was aiming big. If you go through everything he says and the room, the level of himself that is saying that, he was aiming pretty big. But a lot of times you got to aim big to hit big. And if we stay in a tighter eye or just around that tighter eye, it does get better. It does learn things, it does open a bit. But the real Misogi is going from room to room to room. And a couple of things today. I don't know if it's correct or not, but if we purify the five senses, what is the sixth sense? Well, we were taking the thesis today that the sixth sense is intention. And part of the Misogi is we get better at going to the energy, the intention, the Misogi directly. And initially, we need these little stops, which we've covered today. That's okay. But again, O-sensei aimed big. So he hit whatever it is, grand prize, enlightenment, awakening, one with the universe, standing on the floating bridge, whatever you want to call it, right? And so it's an interesting thing that in a lot of ways, I don't know him personally, but last night I started watching, well actually the last couple nights I've started watching, because it's on Netflix now, it's called The Last Dance. And it was the documentary on Michael Jordan in the last season. He won, you know, when he played, he won 6 titles. 3, and then he took a year and a half off, and then 3. When he played a full season, he won 6 consecutive titles when he played a full season. And the last one was about the unraveling of that. Because, you know, in this particular time, right, we measure everything by winning. And I'm only a couple into it. And I kind of, it's really interesting that I haven't gotten to the end of it, but I've heard a little bit about it. I watched one of the end episodes where he actually cries in front of the camera, you know, in his current age. And that he basically, you know, in his younger years, you know, everybody said he's going to be the face of the whole professional basketball. and what he had to overcome to do that. And then he became a winner. And how winning almost took his life over. And I find it fascinating because when I was a lot younger, see, that was about the age, when I was in my early to mid 40s, my daughter, I just called on the phone. She wanted me to call her back, so I got to do that pretty quick. But she started playing basketball in Asian leagues. She's half Asian because some Asian moms. She was Asian enough that she could play Asian ball. And so I would take her to the practices. And so, I'd pick up basketball. There would be a gymnasium where we would be practicing. There would always be side baskets. And my guiding archetype in those days was Michael Jordan. The Warriors were not very good. Well, they were not consistently good. And so I would be a Warrior fan. And when the NBA Finals come around, I'd be a Bulls fan. And I'd root for Michael and the Bulls. And Michael, to me, was like the epitome of a champion. All right. And there's a lot of stuff in this documentary I had no idea was going on. Like the current coach of the Warriors, Steve Kerr, was on the last 3 championship teams. And Michael Jordan punched him in the face. And they worked it out. But Jordan would not tolerate anybody that didn't live up to his standards of what a championship was and what a champion was. I didn't know that. I just saw, all the highlights and everything. He was somebody that was like an archetype. And looking at it, I remember me, because I would go, I was a lot younger then, so my body was, but still young, and kind of probably about my mid 40s. And, I could do those things where you jump on one side of the basket and then you go underneath in midair and finish on the other side. I used to just go to the gym, and when my daughter was practicing, I got one of the balls and I would be doing a lot of those moves that Jordan did, in my own 5'6", 40-plus-year-old body, right? But, if I was going to the Y now, I'd go there and I'd be Stephen Curry, And Curry apparently is a much healthier being. And what I was really interesting is to look at yourself in your mid-40s and realize that one of your driving archetypes was this guy. And then, you go through a documentary and you see his metamorphosis. He's legitimately sweet. And then he becomes a winner. And when he becomes a winner, there's just winning. And his treatment of people, oftentimes his teammates, couldn't live up to that. But he wouldn't tolerate that. And how he literally created all this tension. And he had the perfect coach, a man named Phil Jackson, who was into things like Native Americans practices and Zen and everything. And he had an incredible teammate named Dennis Rodman, who was totally free spirit, and how everybody had to somewhat work together. Michael being the actual lead archetype. Phil Jackson, the facilitator, the magician. And at the other end of the spectrum was Dennis Rodman, the ultimate free spirit. And so it's fascinating for me to go through that journey again when I'm 73 years old and I go back to who I was then, right? And my view of the archetype that Michael represented, and now to deal with the person behind the archetype. it's a fascinating journey. I think they're like, I don't know, 10 episodes or something. I watched the 7th one because apparently, that's the one which he cries at the end. Because, he really, is going over all the pain it took to treat people the way he treated them. And how possibly he was misunderstood. And, and I watched that because I just want to see it. I'm going to watch it again in sequence. But, we oftentimes, what I kind of mentioned is though Sensei aimed big. I imagine he was probably really difficult to be around because of his sense of who he was. One of the reasons that I have a close association with Robert Nadeau is that he and O Sensei, they had a good relationship. Robert Fraser also. And they were Americans, so I think he treated them maybe a little different than he treated the Japanese. But I have no doubt that that part of O Sensei was a lot like Michael Jordan. And that maybe a lot of that was the culture. But what we're trying to do is say, okay, how can we just do a little bit to, on our level, work the essence of what he wanted us to do, aside from the cultural things. He's Japanese, even though he was universal, he treated the Japanese a certain way. Americans saw him, I think, a little bit outside the cultural bubble if they were people like Terry Dobson and Robert Nadeau, Robert Fraser, then they had a different relationship with him. I'm personally grateful that I started in America with those people than I did in Japan, because I would have gotten caught up more in the actual cultural sense of him. But anyway, today we took a kind of an alternate route into something I think is important, which is Misogi. Think about it, okay? I think there's a lot in what we did. The senses keep us tied to a tight eye. And so some of the clearing, the breath, we'll do some more of it. I've experimented a little bit with doing some of the stuff with some of the weapons. We did some of the more vigorous movements towards the end because it's a, the trap in this is that you get very, very like that, but boom. There are other energies that also exist that we need to go through. That doesn't mean that I do them. And so, ability to boom, do a clean cut without a lot of I going into it or I being a little too out of it, boom, is part of Misogi also. Okay, so I'm gonna call my daughter. She says she needs to bug me, which usually is not the best news in the world. Okay, I don't think it's can you watch my granddaughter because we're, there's strict social distancing these days. So I got to call her and see what she needs to do. But I thank you all for tuning in today. Okay.
Thank you, Sensei.
We'll be back on be with the intention stuff. I remember one thing that, I mean, believe it or not, okay, I taught Linda Holiday Sensei kind of a real remedial Tai Chi set, 30 movements. And Ano Sensei learned some of it. And so Linda came up to me, she got back from Japan, and she said, one time Ano Sensei and we went out to one of the shrines and we practiced the Tai Chi you taught us. And I went, really? And then she said Ano Sensei had a very interesting comment. And the comment, I can't remember word for word, but it was kind of more like, I really like this. And he says, Japanese Budo gets so caught up in all this do or die stuff that, and I actually, worked a little bit with Tojima Sensei and Yanase Sensei with some of the touch, because they were very curious. So, didn't do as much with them as I did with Ano Sensei. But, I was showing Tojima Sensei some of the joined hands practices. He was fascinating, right? And so, the Tai Chi itself is kind of interesting because, it can be kind of a drifty thing, or it can be, fall strictly into the form. But it's moving intention at its best. Boom. And there's a variety of different types of energies that are associated with it. And so we need to get back doing some more of the Tai Chi on the noontime thing. So I realized that lately we've been sort of covering some other stuff. By the way, I'm doing a Tai Chi beginning course with a beginning and an end to it, starting on Wednesday, August the 19th, roughly a month away. I gotta, get the advertising out. I put it on Facebook and dojo mailing list. But if you're interested, dojo members, no cost, just a regular part of the membership. Those of you who have stayed with us, continuing to pay, even though there's no classes other than the online classes, thank you. Okay, but what we're going to do is I'm encouraging you, if you have any friends, family, because it's all online. You don't have to travel to 190 Martha Street to do it. But I might shoot it there because of the mirrors. You can kind of see the movements, as I'm facing away from you, can see it, you can see yourself in the mirrors. So I remember Master Choi taught a class at both Davis, UC Davis, and UC Santa Cruz. And they were both in dance studios with mirrors. And that made the whole thing so much easier. So it will be shot at the dojo, but online. So if you know of any friends that might want to start that, see, it's a 5-minute set. It'll go about 6 weeks. And you feel like you need to kind of connect to the intention. It's 5 minutes. If you want to do more, I used to do 6 of them. Get me into a half hour just to kind of really settle deeply into it. So, some of the longer sets take more space and more time, but the 5-movement set, you can do it 5 minutes. Got a little time, you're going nuts. Do the short form. All right. And if you have friends who kind of socially distance and online practice together, so let them know. The charge for the course for non-dojo people is $100 for the 6 weeks. It's Wednesday nights, the 19th through the 23rd. 19th of August through the 23rd of September. It didn't seem right, but it counted as 6 Wednesdays, 7:30 to 8:30. Family members are also encouraged. Okay, what I'm doing is just if there's a family member, if you're a dojo member, you don't get charged, but it's half price for family, so it'd be $50 for the 6 weeks. So I gave a little thought into formatting stuff. And so we put some stuff online already, but that will be an online thing. We'll tape them, put that online as well. So that's coming up. So if people are interested, spread the word.
Sensei, if you do like a half page, like an online kind of JPEG or something that would have the information, I'll share that. Like,
I can mail you. I did actually a poster for it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do I have your email? It's Mordred something.
Mordred at iCloud.
At what?
Or iCloud.com or me.com or Mac.com. It's all the same.
Modred at,
Yeah,
MAC.
we're recording this on the internet, so why don't I send you an email?
Okay, that works.
I haven't sent you an email, but I'm going to do the class.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. I gotta see what my daughter wants. Thank you.
Thank you, David.